Hey everybody, it's Steve with Real Progressives. You know, I sat there and I relished when I understood why it was that I was becoming a progressive. Folks, I came from a right wing perspective. And so becoming a progressive was nothing short of a miracle. And it was a huge shift away from where I came from. I mean, major shift. I had to reconnect all the dots. I had to change where the lines were drawn. I had to stop thinking of X person as my enemy and Y as my enemy, and I had a whole new perspective on life. And it all came over a period of years. It didn't happen in one moment. However, the thing that brought me into understanding what it meant to be a progressive and why I wanted to be a progressive, and not even why I didn't even choose to be a progressive. What I did was I learned how the economy worked, because that was what most of the right-wing talking points were about for me. Almost all of them came down to me working my ass off and my tax dollars going to pay for all these people's bad decisions. And, I went to school and I did all these things. Why shouldn't they? And it was this shoulda, shoulda, shoulda mindset. And it was only when I learned MMT, modern monetary theory, for those of you who out there who don't know what this means, it was only when I learned how our nation's economy really works, how our federal government actually funds itself, and how the states are funded, ironically, by the decisions that the federal government makes. And when I started understanding the role of the currency issuer, I stopped putting the onus on the little people who had to bear the weight of all those policy decisions. And it changed me immensely. And I got to tell you, I thought that when I left the right wing and I was able to move through the Democratic Party and through the libertarian world and all that stuff on my way through the quote unquote liberal world and into the progressive socialist world, I thought that there was going to be some destination, that there was going to be these people there that were waiting for me with open arms, and that everybody was going to have a plan, and that blah, 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 right? Well, wrong. What I found when I came full circle was that people are still working without a framework for what it means to be progressive. People are still working without a framework for what it means to fight for the things that we all say we want. I never had respect, even as a right-winger, with those people chasing current events. I didn't have any respect for them at all, because as a right-winger, I was gunning for this desired effect. I knew what I wanted and I was going for it. And as I traversed the spectrum, I became intimately aware that understanding how the economy worked informed the policies that I cared about. It informed what I thought was real, what I thought was possible, and what I thought was worth fighting for. Now, we're surrounded by people, gadflies, people that are full of infotainment. Our alternative media spends more time trying to get likes and clicks than it does to actually inform you of anything. They're more interested in being popular and having wars, faux wars with other alternative media entities, that they're not even out there really, they have no real direction. They're compassless. I mean, the compass is going like crazy. And it's incredibly challenging when you see what it takes to enact a progressive agenda, and you watch the distractagons chasing you from here to there and there to here, and having no plan, but spending all their time shitting on your plan because they don't like you being certain. They don't like you knowing. They don't want to feel like they're being left behind. They want you to feel like the outsider. And it's a very, very difficult place to be, folks, once you understand how this economy thing works. And you watch people running around chasing shiny objects. The alternative media is so famous for this. I mean, take Nick Hanauer, for example. Here's a guy that's got pitchfork economics, and I see a lot of people lifting him up and praising him. But Nick has heard from the best. From the best. And yet he still has people that are not the best on his program. So he's still in the business of giving a platform to really ignorant, ill-informed economic garbage. And it's like people are afraid to say, hey, I know what's going on. They're afraid to say, I get how this damn thing works. And they want to give this fake, I'm not closed-minded, I'm open-minded. So I'm open to all things, even if all things are bullshit, even if you know they're bullshit, even if you can prove they're bullshit. This fake, and it is fraudulent as hell, folks. This fraudulent, I want to just be open to all things mindset. I'm okay, you're okay, we're all okay, except we're not. Because if you ever want to achieve anything, for example, let's take something as simple as a college degree. A college degree, you know you need X number of credits to get the degree. And you know you need certain credits in certain areas to get that degree. Well, you can always tell when somebody doesn't have a plan. They just take random credits all over the place and hope that at some point in time it amounts to a degree. And you wonder why somebody leapfrogged you and jumped through these hoops and got way further ahead and was able to attack the things they wanted to attack quickly. Because they went into it with a plan. But when you don't have a plan, you waste time. You waste inordinate amounts of time. Time that we don't have now as we stare climate crisis in the face. As we realize that in very, very short period of time, we're going to hit that mark where we're at the point of no return. Or at the point of cataclysmic results. And without having that framework for how you view the economy, for how you view policy, for how you view candidates, for how you view the world around you, you're marching aimlessly, spinning in circles, a whirling dervish of nothingness. And this is exactly the kind of thinking that I had hoped when I left the right wing and I came to the left that it wouldn't be there. But it is. It's pervasive. It's all around us. People are embarrassed that they don't know something. So rather than admit they don't know it and rather than learn it, they would rather shit all over it or tell you all the reasons why what you're saying is wrong. It's shameful. It's embarrassing. It's incompetent. But it's there. And it's happening all the time around us. When I try and tell somebody, listen, I'm not making this up. I have absolutely a treasure trove of proof that I'm right. I'm telling you straight up that federal taxes do not pay for these programs. No matter what, every one of our progressive programs, federal taxes are absolutely 100% not being used to pay for them. And they will fight with you. And they will suddenly, but what happens when the dollar isn't the world reserve currency? Folks, I'm talking about paying for this program. Yo, eyes up here. I'm talking about paying for this program. Why are you telling me about some stupid thing about a world reserve currency? It's irrelevant. It's hugely irrelevant. It's impossibly irrelevant. But why are you talking about that when I bring up the fact that we can pay for Medicare for all with a tax cut, by the way? Not a tax increase, a tax cut. Do I sound like I'm equivocating? Do I sound like I'm unsure of myself? Do I sound like I don't know? And if you think so, boy, oh boy, do we got some stuff to talk about. You got Elizabeth Warren over here on one hand talking about how she's going to pay for it, and she's talking about all these fights. You got Bernie Sanders over here talking about how he's going to pay for it. You got the right wing over there saying how it's impossible, we can't pay for it. You got Hillary cackling from 2015 and 16 still saying it's pie in the sky. And yet we think that we're just going to demand Medicare for all without answering the question of how you're going to pay for it. It's humorous. It's ridiculous. And yet there are people out there That will act like, oh, well, that, we don't have a Congress, so MMT can't possibly happen. Blah, blah, blah. It's just not possible. So we're just going to have, MMT already is possible. Knuckle sandwich. It already is happening. It's paying for our military right now. In fact, MMT is a description of how the economy works. It's not in any way, shape, or form something we have to implement. Sorry. You don't get to be peers on this subject. You don't get to act like you know what you're talking about when you don't. You have to accept you don't understand and say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. I have a question. But acting like you do and then misleading people in the movement when we need everyone pulling in the same direction. When you mislead people and you provide fake news, and it is fake news, you bypass the fundamental question. How do we impact? How do we enable? How do we make a progressive agenda come to be? How do we bring about a Green New Deal? Now, if you want to sit there and you want to tell me that some people are pro-nuclear energy and some people are pro-wind and solar and all this other stuff, fine, I get it. There are some scientific debates to be had. But when it comes to the economy and how we're going to pay for it, the right wing isn't over there debating whether or not we could use nuclear. They're fine with nuclear. The right wing's not over there complaining about whether we can. They're complaining about how are you going to pay for it? Why are you going to? They think you're going to raise their taxes and destroy their lives. And if you keep running around talking about how you're going to pay for it by raising taxes here and you're going to tax all this stuff, our heroes are saying this. You're setting up a false scarcity narrative that empowers the right wing to say flat out, we can't afford it. Oh, they're just going to raise taxes on you to pay for this health care thing. The federal government can afford to buy anything available for sale in U.S. dollars, period, without any question at all, without raising a single nickel in tax. The United States government can purchase anything for sale in U.S. dollars, period. Do you understand what I'm saying? It can afford because it creates the dollars every time it spends, every time it passes a bill into existence, it spends money into existence. This is not a conspiracy. This is not some out there idea. This is not some theory. It's just a theory. This is the fact jack and is the ultimate key to getting a progressive agenda through. And it begins by giving you a framework to operate under so that you're not guessing at stupid things that shouldn't be guessed about. So that when you're evaluating whether a program is good or bad, you're not just going based on the feels or wind's blowing this way, let's go that way. It gives you a framework, a lens by which to judge and understand how systems in the economy work and how the states work and how the federal government works and how international trade works and how the balance of payments between countries works and how developing nations get off the ground. All these questions that people bring up and they think themselves so enlightened are readily answered when you understand the framework of how the economy really works. And instead of allowing impediments like ignorance and how you always thought it was to impact how it really is and impose those constraints when they don't exist in reality, to impose those constraints on our ability to survive is tantamount to murder, in my opinion. See, it's real easy for us to get angry at the right wing, because the right wing is easy to get angry at, right? Let's be fair. The right wing makes it really easy to get angry because they naysay everything. They always come up with some silly, nonsensical response to things, and they're just angry and blah, blah, blah. And they're guns and whatever other thing you want to cast on them. But when the left, when our own tribe, when our own gang is steeped in the same lethal myths, the same lethal legends, the same distractions, the same things that will lead to our demise. Oh, but they have better bedside manners. Don't forget that. They're inclusive, so let's not forget that. But when you understand the net effect is we all die because of that ignorance, it's time to get away from that partisan sniping and start realizing without a fundamental understanding of how the economy works, there is no progressive agenda, period. And before you tell me, well, we don't have a Congress to do this, well, guess what, alternative media that says silly things like this? Until the people understand and demand, we will never have a Congress that delivers that. Interesting, huh? You mean to tell me that the people need to understand before they'll demand better from their Congress critters? Yeah, I do. And do you mean to tell me that all this stuff is impossible? Absolutely not. It's 1,000% possible, but it's 100 million% contingent on you not kneecapping people that understand the economy and getting on board and helping push the ball forward. It's only shameful to not understand something when you puff up and act like you do understand something, and then you waylay the people that are really fighting it and really working it to try and save us. It's when you don't understand and you try to throw cold water on it or throw a wet blanket on it and try and diminish it, that you destroy the movement, that you destroy progress, that you become the enemy by default. It is impossible. Now let me talk to you about this. This is really big time. I told you a few minutes ago that Medicare for All requires probably a tax cut because it has a deflationary bias, meaning that once you extract some of that economic activity, that chaos, and all the jobs that were there as a result of processing the insurance payments as they work tooth and nail real hard, man. They went home every night beaten down and tired, exhausted, trying to deny you health benefits. That's what they're, hey babe, here, sorry about that. Had a rough day at the job, man. Busy trying to deny people health benefits. Okay? Because of all the economic activity that occurs trying to deny people health coverage by streamlining it into a single payer and pushing it into Medicare for All, not only have you eliminated a massive amount of red tape and a massive amount of economic chaos, but you've also eliminated a lot of jobs. Now, those jobs can be regained by repurposing them through passing a federal job guarantee, number one, by bringing those people into the Medicare programs to be able to support the people. But ultimately, Medicare for All it's a tax cut. It's like a tax cut for everyone. Even if they try to raise taxes on us for visual purposes, for optics, for the people that refuse to try to learn this stuff, okay? And yes, it is refused to try to learn this stuff. You don't find it interesting, you're bored, you want to follow current events, you want to chase things around, you want likes, you want clicks, you want all that stuff. Fine. Lead, follower, get out of the way. Because this is an issue that must be front and center. Because there is no Green New Deal without it. And yet at the same time, without having a Green New Deal, there is no you and I, because we've got 11 years to not just pass the legislation that's important to us, but to actually implement the solutions and start peeling back the carbon footprint to be able to stave off some of the more cataclysmic outcomes that climate disaster is going to bring to all of us. The climate refugees that are going to come. All the mass exodus from countries that are arid and that don't have water and don't have real resources. Like in Syria, where drought, a country that was food secure, got hit with drought. And those people came into the city, and all of a sudden bedlam occurred. And then, of course, the U.S. was in there stirring the pot. But what do you got? You got climate refugees. And it's only going to get worse if we don't get smart. And that means the people, especially you alternative media, that ignore this stuff, that want to maintain that you're up here, but you don't want to understand how the economy works. You're waylaying the movement. You're hurting it. You're hurting it. Doesn't matter if everybody's, yeah, let's go. Because if we don't get the people in there that understand how to pay for it, if we don't make the country realize that we can have nice things, if we don't make it so that we choose to make all these things bipartisan, tripartisan, nonpartisan wins. Imagine if you could do all these things while simultaneously not raising taxes to pay for them, while simultaneously demonstrating the need to raise taxes for inequality purposes, having nothing to do with paying for this, but be able to raise taxes on the billionaires to wipe out that kind of one-person outsized purchase of our democracy. Imagine building a true coalition of the 99% based on understanding how the freaking economy works. And that's it, baby. That's it in a nutshell. You're not going to get anywhere chasing little stories and running around. Think about this. Every single protest you see out there, if that protest dies that day, it's done absolutely nothing. People's minds, people's attention spans are shorter than a squirrel. If you don't keep a sustained, recurring approach with goals, with demands, with a outcome in your sights that you're striving for, that doesn't just begin and end on the day of that little event, nothing changes. And this is why the framework for evaluating policy, the framework for understanding and staying committed to the progressive agenda is so vital. Understanding what the power of the federal government is and being able to leverage it for the 99%. Instead of getting sidetracked with, well, what about this thing over here? And what about that thing over there? Staying focused on building an economy and actually mobilizing resources to attack these major problems. There is no progressive agenda without it. You can talk till the cows come home and absolutely nothing will change. Nothing will change. If I tell you nothing will change and I can prove that nothing will change, would you listen? Would you change? Would you change? Would you consider for a moment that a nation that creates its own currency, like the UK, like Australia, like Japan, like the United States, can do tremendously wonderful things? The power of a fiat currency is not to be played with. It is a game changer. Have you noticed every single gold-backed currency in history has failed? Oh, really? Everybody talks smack about fiat. Let me show you. Fiat's the only thing surviving. These nonsensical gold buggeries, every one of them has failed. Why is that? Because gold and commodity-backed currencies diminish the power and the ability to make bold changes. For example, put a man on the moon. For example, solve climate change. For example, universal health care. Forget Medicare for all even. We could have a full-blown health service where people walk in and get health care for free. But because our minds are screwed by neoliberal bullshit, neoliberal lies, we refuse to let go of that. We would rather stay in our cage, rather stay confined, rather wear the cuffs of the oppressor than actually embrace the truth and demand, insist on a progressive agenda, on a Green New Deal, on a job guarantee, on expanded Social Security, on paid family and medical leave, on eradicating student debt, on eliminating food insecurity, on making housing a right. All this stuff is possible, infinitely possible. But it requires, forget the elected officials. The elected officials have problems because you don't understand what I'm saying. So they have to get reelected. And so they say some ridiculously stupid things because the American public has been duped into believing the nation is broke and that you've got to eat your peas. I talked about this on the Convo Couch the other day, and I've talked about it for years. Going back to the Take Back Democracy March in Washington, D.C., back in 2016. Folks, the United States has a sovereign, free-floating, non-convertible fiat currency. It is a tax credit. Every time the United States government spends $1, it's spending new money. And every one of those dollars that the United States government spends are congressionally appropriated, congressionally authorized. Banks fill the void. They provide credit when the federal government doesn't do its job of spending on the people. We have to go to Wall Street. That's right. Every time you want to reduce spending, you're pushing us to Wall Street. You're pushing us to banks. You're pushing us to finance a Green New Deal with banks. Silliness. Ridiculousness. This is the kind of stuff that as we're in these election cycles, people stop paying attention to because all they want to do is cheer for a candidate. They don't realize that the candidates that are there to serve us. But they're there right now to get elected. So they're going to say what they got to say to get elected. It's up to we the people to make demands. And watch how quickly platforms change. Watch how quickly the rhetoric changes. Watch how quickly the laws on the books change. When the people understand and demand and make no quarter, give no quarter for those who would gaslight us into believing we can't do things. Wow, what a difference. It's up to you and I to make it impossible for the media and for these candidates to tell lies, to diminish us with low expectations. We can do tremendous things. We could build a moon colony, for goodness sakes, if we wanted to. We could build a sub-oceanic existence if we wanted to. We could do any number of things. We could provide irrigation to California to prevent forest fire. We could do anything we want if we have the real resources to do it. And we do, in abundance. So the dollar being a unit of account, meaning an inch or a pound or a degree. You don't run out of degrees, you don't run out of pounds, you don't run out of inches. or meters or centimeters or millimeters. You don't run out of them. You don't run out of runs in a ball game. You come to the game, depending upon how many runs they score is how many runs you get. Where did the runs come from on the scoreboard? Well, they came out of thin air, didn't they? That's how governments spend. The government, the Federal Reserve, is a giant scorekeeper for the activity. And the federal government is the price setter. It's the monopoly issuer of the currency. It can do all of this, period. And all these, well, what about this and what aboutisms? All these what abouts tend to be people trying to superimpose some nonsensical issue that may be very important, but has nothing to do with anything that I just said. What about the United States government plundering third world nations as it tries to extract resources? What about it? It's horrible. It's happening all the time. Why is it doing that? Because it can. Why can it do that? Oh, you can come up with a million reasons why. But it doesn't change the fact of the currency. It doesn't matter about gold. It doesn't matter about Gaddafi and some gold thing. It matters about control, right? The United States likes to have control. But it doesn't change the fact that our government can pay for everything that we need. Stop conflating them. Stop wrecking our lives by distracting people with bullshit. Let's deal with our foreign policy without distracting from domestic policy. Our domestic policy is what do we need as people? Period. We need schools. We need food. We need energy, renewable. We need an environment. We need health care. We need shelter. We need all these basic things. And we need to not put the burden on regular people so they have to make tough decisions about whether to care for a child or go to work that day. It should be illegal to provide jobs that don't provide paid family medical leave. It should be illegal whether you're a contractor or an employee. Why don't we do that? Because we don't understand how the economy works, so we don't demand it. That's right. Here we are in the coming up on winter. How many people will die from exposure this winter because we don't know how the economy works, so we won't make the demands? Instead, we'll tell the local communities to put spikes on the park benches to prevent the homeless from sleeping on them. All of this is completely a political choice based in economic malfeasance. All of this is unnecessary. And all of this is a direct result of our movement being too proud to admit they don't understand and refusing to ask questions and moving on away from the economic narrative and moving on to chasing shiny objects. Because it's more fun to get likes and clicks and be aimless. It's almost like a badge of honor not to understand. Oh, I don't know, it's a stupid economic thingy. It's almost like a badge of honor with some. I don't get it. I never found ignorance to be cool. Do you? Do you think being ignorant is a cool thing? It's like, yeah, man, I'm like super cool. I'm in the ignorant club, man. There's stupid smart people over there that understand this stuff. Fuck them, man. I like being ignorant, dude. It's pretty cool. It's rad, man. So rad. Like, totally for sure and stuff. To me, the single most important thing our movement can do is get smart and get smart fast. We don't have time to be dumb. We don't have time for ignorance. And I'm sorry, we don't have time for all the manners even. Time is ticking. And if you have kids, grandkids, friends that you want to see live, you got to get serious, and I mean serious real quick. Why do you suppose people, especially in our own movement, would superimpose all these fantasy novels about petrodollars and how the U.S. dollar is supported by the petrodollar? Why do you think they make up these narratives? instead of talking about, damn it, spend on the people. Why do you think they make these narratives up? Because that's right-wing talking points. They don't even realize it. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people get distracted and they don't realize that with or without fair elections, we've got 11 years to solve this climate crisis? That means it requires a unified front of people that understand what our government's capabilities are and then executing on the plan. Remember, MMT provides a framework for understanding the economy, and then by extension, being able to judge policy prescriptions. That's why you don't hear MMTers typically talking about passing state-based Medicare. There may be some Band-Aids here and there. You talk about public banking. Public banking's great. There's nothing wrong with it. However, let me be real clear. The banks we have today are supposed to be public banks. The problem is that our Congress has deregulated them because our Congress is captured. The only way that changes is when the people are united and make demands outside of the party structure, outside of the elections. Each one teach one, because otherwise we're screwed. I was on the phone earlier tonight and one of my friends was telling me about how, hey, I see the right wing and I see that they're against this, that, and the other. And I know our left-wing friends are easily swept up in debating about whether Tulsi's good or not, or whether this person's good or not. And they're caught up in personality bullshit. They don't have a compass. It's spinning around like they forgot what true north was. And they're easily led astray. They're easily distracted by libertarian talking points. They're easily distracted by nonsense. And I said, you know what? Kind of hard to see them as allies, isn't it? It's kind of hard to see that as allies when they're literally doing a leg sweep from the people that understand how the economy works. They're kicking the legs right out from under them. So public banks, you look at them and you say, wow, that's a great idea. I'm cool with public banks. But public banks don't do the business of the federal government. They don't do a Green New Deal. You don't finance a Green New Deal through a network of public banks. That's ridiculous. It shows a deep misunderstanding of how economics works. It's not just an opinion, folks. This is where opinion, and this is where, I really don't understand, but damn it, I like this idea of public banks, so I'm going to just ignore what he's saying, and I'm going to defend the public bank people. I'm telling you, I like public banks. Maybe you didn't hear that. But I'm here to tell you that public banks are not the answer for funding a Green New Deal. That is a congressional act. All these neat ideas about setting up investment banks and this, that, and the other, neat ideas that are irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, because at the end of the day, the federal government is the currency issuer. It is the one that can do. The states are restricted to taxes and bonds. They are revenue restricted, and all but one state, Vermont, ironically, has a balanced budget amendment. So that once again leaves you with the one place that can spend new money into existence, new net financial assets that don't have to be paid back in the form of loans. That's why I hate hearing the people talking about, we're going to finance a Green New Deal with public banks. Horse shit. The federal government's not requiring you to pay these things back because it's creating net financial assets in the economy. And if the economy overheats and we have inflation, they will tax that money out of existence. But this idea of funding a Green New Deal with public banks is neoliberal horseshit. We don't require banks to finance a Green New Deal. We require direct action from Congress. And that requires all of us being focused, committed, and knowledgeable. If we're not that, how can you ever expect to achieve a progressive agenda? If you don't have a compass because you're bouncing all over the place chasing headlines, but yet you got all these followers, but you're leading them to nowhere. You're leading them right off a cliff. Because they've got to unite behind the one thing that matters, and that is how to enact a Green New Deal so we can survive cataclysmic climate change. Without that, you're just pissing in the wind. Now, I've watched debates. I've watched the local news. I've listened to alternative media. And they all think themselves clever as they discuss the wealth tax to pay for. Wealth tax isn't paying for a program at all. None of this pays for any programs at all. The best you can say is that it offsets and creates fiscal space. Maybe. Reality is that it's satisfying people out there who don't understand that we can do this without raising taxes. And they're conflating using this to pay for these programs. Unnecessary. We need to tax, and we need to tax just enough to keep the balance of the dollar where it needs to be, to make sure the buying power is where we want it to be so that we have a caring and just economy. And we need to tax the hell out of wealth so that people don't have an outsized ability to buy democracy, but not to pay for Medicare for all, not to pay for a Green New Deal, not to pay for getting rid of student debt. And it's time you learn this. There's no reason for you not to get this. There's really no excuse at this point not to get this. It's too vital. The stakes are too high. We don't have the luxury of ignorance anymore. And we don't have the luxury of following compassless people off a cliff. People will die for ignorance. People will die for a lack of focus. And people will die if we don't solve the climate crisis. And people will die if we don't provide shelter. And people will die if we don't provide food. And people will die if we don't learn economics. Or at least the base level that the United States government can afford to do any of these things. Period. Full stop. Folks, Real Progressives just opened a second nonprofit called Real Progress in Action. We have Real Progressives, which is going to be an education and policy think tank. It will provide you with tools and all the information from the experts you need to learn how to impact change. And Real Progress in Action will take that and turn it into action, and turn it into actionable political, actionable issue by issue advocacy, and get we the people out there attacking the problem where it sits. With the two organizations, we'll be able to take the full process from policy to educating people, to activating people, to providing truth-based media, not just chasing headlines, getting likes and clicks, getting into fake debates and fights with other alternative media, but literally trying to change the world through education and through knowledge. That's the goal. We need your help. It ain't cheap. The enemies we're fighting, it's not just social media. We're actually building real legitimate nonprofits that will fight back against the likes of the Pete Peterson Foundation, that will fight back against these other groups that are out there actively pushing propaganda down our throats. These organizations are there to serve you and I, all of us, not me, us, to take this political revolution and to take this social revolution and to take this educational revolution and provide a vehicle by which to give people a real legitimate opportunity to join together, build radical networks, and take on the establishment and tear down the orthodoxy and bring about a sustainable planet and a caring economy. We have a podcast called Macro and Cheese. Today we had Ndango Sambasila, a Senegalese economist, an all-around good guy, and Fadel Kaboub from the Global Institute of Sustainable Prosperity, and who always is kind enough to wear real progressive swag wherever he goes, talking about modern monetary theory in developing nations and the spectrum of monetary sovereignty. If you haven't heard our Macro and Cheese podcast, it's the experts on there, folks. It will help you learn things you never thought you needed to know, and it will help you see how it all fits together, because this is not a U.S. problem. It's a global problem that we're fighting. Neoliberalism is a global scourge. And we can't fight neoliberalism by embracing neoliberalism. Neoliberalism has to be killed at the root, and the root is an ignorance of economics. Radical privatization, because we believe that we can't afford to do nice things. We claim programs are failures because we underfund them, and we wonder why they fail. Well, it's the same with organizations like Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. If you want to see us really take on the establishment, you want to see us produce even more podcasts, and you want to see us take on these narratives that are so prevalent in society, we need your help. We need your financial contributions, and we need your volunteer hours. Please follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, and go to our website, www.realprogressivesusa.com. And that will change soon, too, to realprogressives.org and action.realprogressives.org. And for our podcast, www.macroandcheese, the letter N, cheese.com. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a great day, everybody. I'm out.